My name is Sophia, and welcome to The Show Must Go On. So, first of all, as you can see, I have a little new setup here. I got this Wally Clark flag from my friend Maddie, who is actually the whole reason that I started watching School Spirits, so thank you for that, Maddie. But sadly, I'm here to talk about the final episode of season 2 of School Spirits. I'm so sad that it's over. Like, I've literally been having School Spirits withdrawals. But this won't be my last School Spirits video, though. I will be also doing a kind of full review on the whole season and just my thoughts on everything. So stay tuned for that. But this is sadly my last video about just focusing on one of the episodes. So let's get into it. So, of course, as usual, starting out talking about the plot. So, first I just wanted to point out the little moment when Xavier, Claire, and Nicole were talking, and Xavier was saying how, they're upset that they're showing up empty-handed again, like they lost Mr. Martin, and he goes, "First time I'm relieved she's a ghost," in reference to Maddie. So, that was just a little funny moment I wanted to mention. So, lots to say about Mr. Martin in this finale. First, I just said he's so scary, because literally that shot of him when he's still in Mr. Anderson's body, like, coming into the school, and literally looking so terrifying, I think my soul left my body. I love how, they tricked him by having Maddie and Janet switch, and then I love how all the ghosts got to come out and be like, "Did you mean to hurt us?" Like, that's what Charlie said. And I'm just so happy they finally got this moment to confront him after everything they went through with him, and, after how much they trusted him for so long and then got their trust broken. And I also liked, of course, when he was like, "You can't stop me, like, you can't touch me," and then Simon says, "But I can," and they have that little, moment where Mr. Martin literally punches him and everything. But once again, just showing how amazing of a friend Simon is. And of course, we have Janet using the taser on Mr. Martin. So the person who had that little theory that I read last week about, because we saw that taser, it was probably going to be used, that was correct, except it wasn't used by Simon, but still was used in the end. And I found it very interesting when Mr. Martin had that moment where he said, "Haven't you ever wondered why so many of us died here? There's more to this school than you understand, even you, Janet." So that obviously I think was one of the most important comments that was made in this episode, because I think it's kind of, setting up for hopefully season 3, where they're probably hinting that, they would be exploring more of, a lot of, theories that people have had about, like, why exactly so many deaths have happened at this school, and the fact that the town itself is called Split River, and there was that mention with, like, the river Styx when Xavier was in the hospital and everything, and how maybe there's, something bigger happening with the town in general, and that's why, for some reason, souls get, like, stuck, in this, like, purgatory. Another really interesting moment was when we saw Xavier talking with his dad, the sheriff, and this is when, he's explaining to him everything that's happened, which, once again, I kind of like how Claire ended up telling Diego everything. I couldn't believe that he, like, actually told his dad what happened. I really thought that, once again, he would have, like, made up some story, but, I mean, I guess it's kind of nice that they're, like, talking about it, but yeah, and I like how Xavier said, like, "I need you to be my dad right now, not a cop." I just thought that was, like, an interesting line, because just over the past 2 seasons, I feel like we've seen so much of, Xavier's struggles with his dad, just like how, like, Maddie and her mom had a complicated relationship, and I don't know, that line just, like, really stood out to me, because it's really true that his dad is always just, like, playing the role of a cop, like, even when he's supposed to just be more of a literal father, to his son, and not. So I'm just also wondering if this is kind of setting up for, like, maybe seeing more of a rekindling of their relationship in the future, and maybe even getting, the sheriff more involved with this whole situation and figuring out what's happening in the town and everything. Okay, so one of my favorite moments of this whole episode was the role that Mr. Anderson played in all of this. I thought it was really cool and such a good idea that they had him kind of like talk to Mr. Martin, and that was what, you know, got Mr. Martin to like get really emotional, and then obviously that's how they ended up being able to, you know, push him back into Mr. Anderson, and then Mr. Anderson got his body back. I didn't know how they were going to handle that whole thing because they kind of just barely showed Mr. Anderson, so I was like, what's going to happen with him? Like, is he going to get his body back? Like, I didn't know how they were going to do that, but I really like how they had him talk to Mr. Martin, because it really is true that there's so many little, like, parallels to, like, Mr. Anderson, Mr. Martin, as well as, like, Maddie and Janet, and obviously Mr. Anderson can relate to Mr. Martin, you know, in their passion for teaching and everything. So I really liked seeing, you know, these two characters kind of like have that moment, especially since, you know, they're so, like, we kind of see those two characters as being so far like removed from each other. Like, obviously Mr. Martin's literally from the 50s and Mr. Anderson's like a modern day teacher, and also, you know, like, I feel like whenever I think about this show, I mean, not as much of this season because I know the living people were more involved with like the whole ghost thing, but for the most part I always see, you know, this show kind of split into like two. It's like the ghosts and the living world, and so it's just like, you know, Mr. Martin and Mr. Anderson feel like two whole separate like characters, like, because they're in the two different realms, but then seeing them talk to each other, you kind of realize that they do have similarities and stuff. And yeah, and it was also just like nice to hear, you know, Mr. Anderson talk about like his guilt over everything that happened and whatever. I also thought it was nice when they showed Simon like apologizing to Mr. Anderson about the fact that he like basically was the reason that he got fired. And because that was another thing that I kept thinking about. I was like, it is kind of awkward that Simon was the whole reason that he got found out and got fired and everything. But of course, you know, he understands the whole situation because, you know, it was complicated. Simon was just trying to save Maddie. And I also thought it was so funny when Mr. Anderson's like, well, at least, you know, it's all done now. And then Simon's like, maybe not. The cops think you stole this car. And then Mr. Anderson just like finds the keys in his pocket and he's like, cool. I just thought that moment was so funny. And yeah, once again, honestly, just like shout out to Patrick Gilmore, who plays Mr. Anderson. I just thought he did a really great job this season, and I really enjoyed all the moments with him in it. So, of course, a big moment of this episode was we finally saw Nicole, Claire, and Xavier break into Eugene's storage unit and watch this, like, video that he had of him being, like, interviewed after everything that happened. And, of course, we end up finding out that he basically thought that Mr. Martin set the fire on purpose and was trying to kill Janet. So, I do have to say, I did really like this finale, but this was one of the only things that I was not, like, as thrilled about, because, I mean, it was still really cool to see, but I did kind of feel like this reveal was kind of a little bit predictable and, like, kind of underwhelming. I mean, I don't know if it's just because, you know, people like me who are making these videos and everything, like, we're trying so hard to figure out things, so therefore when we do actually make predictions that end up coming true, like, it's not as surprising to us, whereas, like, if you were just a person who was literally just, like, watching it and not trying to, like, solve it, maybe it wouldn't be, like, as predictable to you or whatever. But I don't know, I just thought it was weird because I felt like they made it seem like it was gonna be such a huge thing. Like, you know, I really thought that maybe, like, Janet's dad had something to do with it, or like it involves something supernatural, or like, I don't know, like some bigger thing, and then it kind of really did just turn out to be, oh yeah, it was just like Mr. Martin, like, which I feel like we kind of had a feeling that it probably was. So that was the only thing. I kind of was like, thought that was like a little bit underwhelming. I also just liked the little moment where Nicole and Claire were talking, and Nicole was like, oh, don't you want to just go off with your dumb friends? And Claire says, I'm with my dumb friends now. And I just thought that was a sweet moment because obviously, like, Claire has just come such a long way since we first met her in season 1, and I just like seeing, you know, how she's changed. And another moment that I thought was really funny was when they finally found the video and everything, and then they're finding all the stuff, and Claire is like, God bless the hoarder generation. Okay, so we got this interesting scene with Sandra and Sheriff Baxter, and it was cool because, you know, when Sandra says something about how, like, ever since Maddie came back, she feels like a different person, and then that sticks out in the sheriff's mind, and he's kind of like, like, what do you mean by that? Because, you know, of course, Xavier told him that it was a different person, you know, possessing her. So it is kind of interesting to see that the sheriff might be starting to believe. And okay, I just have to take a moment. So Maddie's goodbye scene, I know this wasn't like her official goodbye, but like her first goodbye scene literally broke my heart. Like, my body was literally shaking as I was watching this scene, because I just have such an emotional attachment to all these characters, especially the ghosts. So I was just like, I couldn't, like, I was just like, don't leave them. Also, oh my gosh, when, you know, Wally's like, you're seeing, he's like standing behind because he can't even like handle what's happening, and if you just like watch his face during that part, like, I've never seen devastation like that on someone's face. Like, he looks so sad, especially for Wally, obviously, because Wally's usually a very, like, lighthearted, fun character for us. So the fact that, like, we saw him so devastated by, you know, Maddie leaving and everything, like, oh my god, it literally kills me. And when me and my friend Maddie hung out and we were rewatching this episode, we were, like, legitimately crying over Wally's face. Once again, the only other thing I'll say though about this goodbye scene, I mean, I loved it. I thought it was really sweet, but I have seen some people say they did think it was like a little lackluster in the fact that, like, you know, like, Wally and Maddie have gone through so much, especially, but also the other ghosts too, and then, like, there wasn't even like a kiss with Wally and Maddie, or like they didn't even say like I love you or something. It was just kind of like a hug, and I do kind of agree with that. Like, I was kind of hoping for a little bit like more in their goodbye, but honestly, in a way, I kind of think the way that they did it was almost more devastating than if they had made like this huge deal about it and made it super like, oh my god, I'm gonna miss you so much, like, you know, like big like kiss and like moment. Like, I honestly actually think the way they did it was more impactful and like more emotional, because it's kind of almost more realistic. Like, I feel like if you were to be in like a situation as emotionally heavy as that, like, you kind of just like would be at a loss of words, you know what I mean? Like, I feel like you wouldn't even like be able to speak, because you just like wouldn't even know what to say. And like, that shows how heartbroken they are, that they can't even like find the words to say. And I almost feel like sometimes silence, like, speaks volumes. Like, sometimes I feel like that, once again, is almost, like, more impactful than if Maddie had, like, made this whole big, long, like, speech to, like, Wally and all the ghosts. Because, once again, it kind of just shows, like, how devastated they are to have to say goodbye to each other. And I don't know, like, even though I know Maddie and Wally have had this romantic connection, it's also kind of sweet seeing them just like hug and not make it like this whole romantic thing, because also, you know, for a while, even before they were romantic, they were, you know, also just friends. And like, you know, I don't know, I just think the hug was very sweet. And yeah, I don't know, so I kind of can see what people are saying in some ways, but I also kind of really like the way they did it. And once again, I thought that Milo's like acting in that scene was like, and everyone's was like really good and really heartbreaking. Of course, we see that Maddie's body is dying and she's still a spirit even when Janet gives up her body. So I did have to say that I wasn't sure if this was like they were implying that this was because of how hard Maddie hit her head in the boiler room, so her body was still kind of dying, like some people predicted, or if it was just because Maddie like wasn't ready to like leave yet and she still, you know, felt so emotionally connected to the ghost. I wasn't sure which one it was, or maybe a combination of both, I'm not sure. And of course we finally got to see Maddie's scar, which we had kind of found out from Shredhead on Reddit, and that was really cool. So that was, you know, where we got that clip where she was like underwater, like we predicted, because, you know, her scar, basically, you know, what I thought and what a lot of us probably thought was, you know, her scar was kind of filled with like having to do with her parents and like her dad's drowning. But I did think it was really cool the way that they had it be, you know, kind of the reason that they were drowning was like the mom pouring like a bunch of alcohol. Yeah, it just felt very representative of, you know, everything that Maddie's gone through. And because even when you think about it, I mean, her mom is kind of the whole reason that she's even in this situation, you know, because if her mom had never come to the school that day to tell her about the cabin and everything, and they never had that fight, and they never went into the boiler room, and Maddie wasn't in such an emotional state from that, Janet wouldn't have possessed her, and none of this would have happened. So, you know, it's kind of showing once again how her mom, her whole life has kind of gotten her into these tricky scenarios, even if, you know, not on purpose. But obviously, you know, there's also some, you know, silver lining to that, because obviously I think this whole situation has kind of changed Maddie for the better, and, you know, she's met all these amazing people and everything, so, you know. Okay, so I also really liked how they had, you know, Janet, like, apologize to Maddie, and I just thought it was really sweet, and it's just so funny to think that, like, for so long in the beginning of this season, we really thought that Janet was, like, gonna be, like, such a villain, or even if we didn't think she was, like, the main villain, we still kind of thought she was, like, kind of malicious, so it's, like, weird now seeing that she really is just, like, such a great person, and, like, honestly, she's probably one of the most, like, interesting and, like, powerful characters. But then, of course, we have Mr. Martin taking Janet, which I just have to say, why did no one, like, tie him up again, like, once they got down into the boiler room? Like, I don't know why they just thought he, like, wasn't gonna do anything. Yeah, and then, of course, we finally, you know, actually see Janet's scar and Mr. Martin's scar, like, connected, and we see Janet's dad in her scar, like she said. And I also really liked when she kind of made that speech saying, like, I didn't deserve this, like, I didn't deserve being born in the wrong time, I didn't deserve having my, you know, the way my dad was, I didn't deserve Mr. Martin, you know, like, having to deal with all of that. I just thought that was, like, really powerful. And then, of course, we saw her exit door, and I also really liked that she pushed Mr. Martin when he tried to freaking go in her exit door. It was kind of weird that she didn't cross over, but I can also see why she didn't, you know, because I feel like, you know, I can see why she kind of wants to hear, you know, more answers from Mr. Martin. And I also thought it was cool when they were trapping Mr. Martin in there, and Yuri's like, oh, but this won't, this reset, like, when they put something against the door, and she's like, no, it won't, like, I'll teach you how to keep objects from resetting later. So that was interesting, because obviously we never really got an explanation for, like, why Janet was able to keep objects from resetting. Like, we found out that that's why the keys don't reset, was, like, because of the trauma and everything, but we never found out how she was able to keep, like, that, like, pot that she made in, with Yuri, like, how she kept that from resetting and everything. So I guess that was just another thing they wanted to keep open-ended still, kind of, for a season 3. And then, of course, we have the little chase through the scars. And I just really liked seeing, you know, how all of the ghosts really, you know, defended each other from everything in their scars and really helped each other through it. Like, how Wally punched Mr. Manfredo in Rhonda's. And I thought it was really sweet seeing, you know, the difference between when they first went in their scars alone and how sad it was to how they all helped each other. And I thought it was, oh my gosh, it was so, like, heartbreaking when we saw, you know, all the Charlies, like, making fun of himself in his scar, because, like he said when he talked to Wally that time after the reunion, like, he was his own biggest bully. And we saw Wally finally seeing his mom actually, like, upset over his death and not, you know, calling him a loser or whatever in his scar. And he sees Maddie, you know, that little shot that we saw from one of the teasers of, like, you know, Maddie in her homecoming dress. And yeah, that thing is also still kind of mysterious to me, but yeah, I guess it was just, I don't know, like, I guess one of the things that haunts him is, you know, Maddie, you know, the fact that Maddie has to leave and everything, so he's seeing her, you know, going up these stairs, like, leaving him, which is just, like, it's, like, sweet that, you know, it shows how much he cares about her, but obviously it's also really sad. And of course we get Mr. Martin's whole, like, explanation about everything and what happened, which was that, yes, technically the fire was his fault, but, like, he wasn't trying to purposely kill Janet. It was actually that he was attempting suicide because of everything that had happened with, you know, getting fired, and then we found out his fiance ended up, you know, ending things with him after that and everything. No, it wasn't quite as, you know, evil as we thought. Like, he wasn't literally trying to murder her, but he did still technically cause them to die. And it's so sad that he, like, because, you know, in that moment I do feel slightly, you know, kind of bad for him, you know, that, you know, he wasn't trying to kill her, and, you know, the fact that he was so upset that he was, you know, attempting and everything. But then, you know, I kind of lose sympathy for him, because then, you know, it's so terrible that he made, you know, Janet think that she caused the fire for so long, and, you know, so therefore she lived with all this guilt for, like, all this time for no reason. And, you know, it just, and then of course obviously just everything he's done since with, you know, taking advantage of all of them and everything. And then of course we finally have Maddie's actual, like, goodbye, and we see Wally literally telling her, like, it's time to go. And like, that just broke me once again, because it's crazy to see, you know, Wally going from, you know, talking to her and being like, I really want you to stay, to him literally being the one to tell her to go. And we also see, you know, that the school is, like, all red. So I think, you know, this is just implying that, you know, the veil is, like, so thin between the ghosts and the living world, because of how much, you know, was stirred up with, like, all of them going in their scars and all of the body swappings and everything. Because we see that even, like, Nicole, Claire, and Xavier see the school being all red. And then of course we see Maddie waking up in the hospital, and she got her body back. And it's so weird to see, like, first of all, it's just weird to see her outside of the school. It's weird to see her being able to be seen by, like, her mom and, you know, all of her living friends, like, seeing her mom hug her and everything, like, oh, it's so sweet. And of course we get, you know, Xavier kind of apologizing finally, and then he sees Maddie's dad again. So now we kind of see that it might kind of be a thing that if you've died, even at least temporarily in some place, that you can still see the ghosts in that place even when you come back to life. So, you know, that has me thinking that, you know, a way that they can still continue the show even with Maddie being alive is that she'll probably still be able to see the ghosts in the school, which, you know, that makes me happy that she'll still probably be able to see them. But of course it's still just so heartbreaking that it's never gonna be, like, the same, you know, like, she won't be able to, like, touch them, or, like, you know, like, it's just so sad. And because even, you know, if she can see them, like, she's gonna be in school, and, you know, she can't just constantly be, like, talking to the air and having people think she's insane, like they thought Simon was insane in the first season, you know? But yeah, so I don't know, like, I know this is so, like, bad to say, because obviously I'm so happy that Maddie finally got her body back, but, like, at the same time, I'm, like, really sad because, like, once again, I just have such an emotional attachment to the ghosts, and, like, especially, like, I love her and Wally and everything, so it's also just, like, sad to know that it's, like, never gonna be fully the same. And of course, a big moment at the end of this episode was seeing Wally. He goes back into his scar and he sees his exit door, but then, you know, they don't show us if he goes in it or not, so I know a lot of people are, like, freaking out, but I really don't think that he actually went through the door, because I just feel like Milo Manheim is literally one of their most famous actors in this show, and he's kind of what drives a lot of, you know, people to watch the show, so I feel like they wouldn't get rid of him. And Milo has even made some comments about being in a season 3, so I don't know, I think they just put this in, you know, to kind of get people talking, and, like, you know, to get people to, like, really want to see the next season, to see what happened. And I think they're also just showing that, you know, he really has come so far. And, like, I thought it was sweet how, you know, there was that moment when him and Charlie were talking in the 6th episode where he said, like, I may not have defended you if we were alive at the same time, but, like, now I would flatten anyone who tried to hurt you. And then when they were in their scars together, like, he obviously was very supportive of Charlie when they were in his scar, and then he also kind of, you know, was pushing football players out of the way from, like, hurting Charlie in his scar. And it's just showing that he does have the option, finally, to cross over, but I don't think he's gonna do it yet. Especially also since, you know, even in season 1, he, you know, after Dawn crossed, he was saying to Charlie that, you know, he doesn't want it to happen like that for him. Like, he doesn't just want to just be gone and, like, not get to say goodbye to all of them and everything. So I really don't think he would do that without saying goodbye, at least first. And of course, the very big thing at the end is we see that Simon is in Mr. Martin's scar. So I was kind of right in my prediction. I, you know, talked about it a lot in my last video that I just really had a feeling that, like, something bad was gonna happen to Simon. You know, whether it be he literally died or, I don't know, just, like, something. So I was kind of right. I'm not sure if he actually completely died, but I'll talk about that in a little bit. So now my little review of the episode. So I give this episode a 9 out of 10. Once again, like, I did think this finale was really good. I know I saw some people had, like, mixed feelings about it, but I personally really enjoyed it. But once again, I just knocked it down 1 point because, like I said, there were, like, a few little things that didn't quite live up to my expectations. And episode 5 was still my ultimate favorite of this season. Like, I don't know, that episode was just, like, literally perfect to me. Like I said, I do just think there were some things that were somewhat predictable, but this episode was very emotional. And yeah, you know, I talked about, you know, I wish there was a little bit more with the goodbye, but at the same time, I still really liked it. Yeah, I'm really glad that Mr. Martin said something about, you know, why have there been so many deaths at the school and everything, because, you know, that has been such a big thing that we've been thinking about. And the highlights of this episode, I thought, were, you know, obviously them taking down Mr. Martin and, you know, getting Mr. Anderson his body back, and seeing the sheriff start to believe, Maddie's goodbye once again, even though it killed me, Janet's apology and her, you know, finding her door and pushing Mr. Martin, them helping each other in their scars once again, you know, of course, finally getting Mr. Martin's explanation, and of course seeing, you know, Miss Maddie finally, you know, get her body back and being in the hospital, and, you know, us seeing Maddie's dad again and everything, and then of course the whole thing with Simon at the end because it's very mysterious. Yeah, it's just crazy to think that we finally, you know, have seen Maddie get her body back. Like, obviously that, it's like this whole show has been kind of building up to that moment. You know, it's also crazy to think about how much has changed since the beginning because, you know, we started out with, you know, the first episode of the whole show, Maddie trying so hard to leave the school and being so upset, to, you know, now in this episode, she literally almost didn't even go back into her body when she had the opportunity to, because that's how much, you know, she's grown to love all the ghosts and everything. Okay, so the final part of this video is going to be, I'm going to talk a little bit about some theories for a potential season 3 that I've seen. Okay, so this person said, from season 1 to the season 2 finale, we get a new perspective on Maddie and Simon's relationship, and it's no longer just a story of two best friends who love each other enough to persevere. They are a modern-day Orpheus and Eurydice, except in this version, Eurydice made it out alive and Orpheus is trapped in hell. Eurydice, Maddie, didn't look back and survived, but Orpheus, Simon, looked back to make sure his beloved would come back with him and got trapped in hell. So I just thought that was really interesting because I'm pretty sure in, you know, a past video I talked about how, you know, some people were saying there was kind of a connection to, you know, this whole story with, like, Orpheus and Eurydice, and, you know, they even mentioned that story in season 1. So yeah, it's just interesting to kind of see the parallels. This person was saying how they kind of feel like maybe another part of finally seeing your exit door and being able to cross over is, like, you kind of have to fully truly believe that you didn't deserve what happened to you. Like they said, no, I could have done this better, or I could have saved myself. They have to fully believe that they are not at fault for their own deaths because, you know, Janet finally was saying, like, I didn't deserve any of this, and she was really strong and confident. Yeah, and maybe that's why, you know, Wally was able to see his door, because I think he's finally kind of gotten to a place where he realizes that he knows he's a good person now, you know, even if he sometimes didn't act like it when he was actually alive. And, you know, he's just, once again, he's changed so much. So once again, maybe that also kind of explains why he was able to see his door. So some people were saying how they think like Simon's not really dead, and he also wasn't possessed by anyone. He is still living, but he is kind of just like, his living body is like trapped in the scar and like in the purgatory, because like I said, like when they showed the red lights and everything, I think that the veil just became so thin once again because of like everything that happened, that he was able to just, you know, when he went to the boiler room, he was just able to walk into the scar. And but now I think because he went into the scar, now he's kind of like trapped like between worlds. So I think that would make the most sense, because, you know, obviously if he just completely just like died, I feel like that would be really tragic, because then there would literally just be no way of bringing him back, and I just feel like that would be so sad to do to him, like after everything he did for Maddie and everything. And I also just don't know how he would have like died, you know. And I also don't think it was, you know, like what happened to Maddie with Janet. Like I don't think he got possessed or anything, because first of all, like we literally saw all of the ghosts like after the fact. Like we saw Charlie and Yuri and Janet and Rhonda all talking, and then we saw Wally, you know, in his scar, and obviously we saw Mr. Martin still trapped in the scar. So there's no one really that could have done it. I mean, except for I guess like Mina and like the band kids, but like I really doubt that they would have done it. And I know some people were thinking like, oh, what if Wally actually took his body, but I really don't think that's the case. I feel like that would be so out of character for Wally, even though yes, he loves Maddie so much and he wishes he could be with her, but you know, I don't think he would ever like do that to Simon. So then this person said something that I think is really interesting, that maybe it's possible for the other ghost to return to the living realm, kind of the way that Simon as a living person was able to go into the ghost realm. Because once again, maybe if the veil is like so thinned, maybe the same way Simon came in, the ghost could come out. So that would obviously be very interesting. I don't know if they would do that, you know, because I don't know if they would maybe still just kind of want to make it about, you know, all the ghosts kind of just, you know, making peace with what happened to them and then moving on. But I do think that would be really cool, obviously, and I would low-key love that, because once again, I have such an emotional attachment to all of them. So if they all got to be living again and then be with Maddie and everything, obviously I would be so happy. So this person said that part of Einstein's famous theory of special relativity basically says that mass and energy are interchangeable, which means that energy can be converted into physical mass, meaning that with enough energy, it could be theoretically possible for a ghost to regain their bodies. When you think about it, their souls are basically just energy with a consciousness, and it's clear that this energy also remembers how their physical bodies looked and operated, since their souls, energy with consciousness, still look and move just like their previous physical bodies. So maybe if the ghosts get zapped with enough energy, said energy will convert into matter, aka their physical bodies, essentially making them alive once again with the appearance and age of when they died. So once again, I thought that was so interesting. You know, I don't know if that would actually come true, because once again, I don't know if that would be like a little too convoluted for it, and you know, if that would kind of go against like what they're trying to, the message they're trying to make and everything. But I just obviously think that would be so interesting, because it is kind of true. Like if Simon could go into that realm, why couldn't they go into the other realm, you know, if the veil was that thin? So yeah, but of course I also don't know exactly what, like, how they would be able to get zapped with enough energy to, you know, get their bodies back or whatever. But I still just thought that was a really cool theory. And then also, so there was this article that the creators of the show did with Us Weekly, and at one point they said, in the supernatural world of this, it's a new expansion. We're learning more about what can happen and what might be possible for everyone else. So, once again, I feel like this might just be referencing, like, how, you know, we might kind of find out more of the, like, rules of, you know, the living in ghost world, like how, you know, Simon's able to maybe be stuck there but still be living, and once again, how maybe this could also mean more possibilities for the ghosts, possibly being able to leave, or, you know, anything like that. So yeah, that's it for this video. Thank you so much for watching, and thank you to everyone who has watched all my videos about these School Spirits episodes. Once again, I am going to have one more about this season, you know, just talking about everything. But yeah, but obviously I'm really sad that this was the last one, like, about one of the episodes. Yeah, I just, once again, I really hope we get a season 3 renewal announcement soon. I don't know, I do think we are going to get one, considering, you know, how much the viewership went up and everything this season, so I don't know why they haven't said anything yet, but hopefully. And then of course I will definitely make videos about it whenever that were to come out. Stay tuned for my video coming soon about reviewing the whole season, and I will also now just start doing other videos, like I said, about, you know, other movies and shows and music that I'm interested in. Ariana Grande's deluxe version of her album Eternal Sunshine is coming out on March 28th, and I'm so excited about that because she is my favorite singer, and I love the original Eternal Sunshine album so much. So I will definitely be doing, like, a reaction to that and a review of it and everything. So if that's something that interests you, then definitely stay tuned for that. But like I said, I'll just be doing other movie, show reviews, music reviews, and everything. So just stay tuned for more videos, and I'll see you next time. Bye!